We'll go inside the hunt for the variant that could make life less fun around here while we wait for everyone to get vaccinated. Douglas County calls on Colorado to get its Texas on, while admitting the county can't go rogue on its own. A year ago today, COVID was here, and politicians were still urging us to gather in large groups. We'll look back at what we've learned, and a peek into the camera roll on your phone for the very last photos of normalcy as we await its return, together on Next. The race is to vaccinate the most vulnerable Coloradans before more contagious variants of COVID-19 have the chance to spread widely here. The state is now going to focus more of its testing in Chaffee County, where the first 3 local cases of a strain out of South Africa turned up in prison staff and an inmate. This strain can reinfect people who have already had COVID, and the state said today that is in fact what happened in one of those 3 cases. Steve Staker starts us off tonight.
Finding COVID is relatively easy. Finding a variant takes more work.
There's a significant upfront preparation that has to happen to ensure that we get coverage of the entire genome when we're looking at it.
Emily Travanti runs the state lab and oversees the special gene sequencing it takes to find variant cases. It can take several days, so the state can only sequence a certain amount of positive samples each week to see if they are the variant.
We're very close to that 5% threshold. It bounces around a little bit.
That's the surveillance goal. Sequence 5% of positive cases in Colorado. Finding the B117 variant, the first one found in the UK and first discovered in the US here in Colorado, finding that one is easier. There's a marker. Now follow me here. This gets kind of nerdy but interesting, I promise. COVID tests look for certain genes. The N gene, the S gene, and one that sounds like a space alien, the ORF1AB gene. If a sample shows 2 of those, you have COVID. If it specifically shows you have the N gene and the ORF1AB gene, and the S isn't there, the state lab has determined that's a marker for B117.
We're trying to make sure that everything that has the marker goes to sequencing, and then also to make sure we are not focused only on the marker, but that we get a really broad sampling, cast a wide net across the state.
Problem is, there isn't a marker like that for other variants, like the one they just found in Buena Vista. So the state will have to continue keeping an eye on that small sample they can test each week and focus their efforts when they find cases.
We are actively trying to come up with screening mechanisms to help us look for those things faster.
Today, the governor said that there's an emergency plan the state has had in place that surges vaccines to places where they find this variant. So they are rushing them to family members of staff at that correctional facility and any other contacts that those people may have had in Buena Vista. And the state lab is going to take some time and now focus on Chaffee County. They're going to look at all the positive cases there and test those specifically and sequence them for the variant, Kyle.
The state is rushing emergency vaccines to people who might have had contact with the positive cases of the variant inside the prison. I'm assuming, because we know Governor Polis, that does not actually mean, say, the other prisoners who might have had contact with the cases in the prison.
Yeah, and that was the debate in the beginning of this. You know, the governor initially, or I should say the state health department initially had prisoners and people in congregate settings high on that vaccine priority list. But after some political pressure, everything kind of changed, and they put prisoners just with any other basic Coloradan. So they are decided by age. It will be interesting to see if the state gets vaccines inside to some of these folks who might be impacted by this variant inside that facility with not a lot of room to space out.
I mean, if we're now moving to people who have had close contact, the gymnastics involved with not giving vaccines to those prisoners starts to get real convoluted. All right, thank you, Steve. Douglas County announced today that it wants to go full Texas, and the Republican county commissioners there are asking Democratic Governor Jared Polis for his permission. It's an acknowledgement that Douglas County can't legally go it alone without state dropping the boom on them or their businesses. The resolution passed today asks the state to reopen Douglas County completely. They cite they're dropping case numbers and increasing vaccinations. Colorado's COVID hospitalizations are back under 300, which is really encouraging. 299 patients, down a dozen from the day before. This time last week, 355 COVID patients were in Colorado's hospitals. Here's our vaccine report for the night. 11% of Coloradans are now fully immunized. That includes people who are getting that one shot and done J&J vaccine. Another 7% or so are partially vaccinated with half of the two-shot combo. We are going to be giving you a simplified pie chart look at the way that the vaccines work, but the pie chart chop was out of the pie that we like today. Imagine knowing that COVID-19 was in the community, was in Denver, but still encouraging people to gather in large groups. I would say we have learned a lot since then because it's been a year. 1 year ago today, Denver city leaders were justifying moving ahead with the St. Patrick's Day parade as other cities were canceling their own. Denver had 3 confirmed cases at that point, and the city's health leaders were making a dubious claim, even for that moment in time, that there was not community spread in Denver. Even at that point, we knew that probably wasn't the whole story.
There's no community transmission within the city and county of Denver. I want to make that clear.
What gives you the confidence to state, as you did unequivocally, that there is not community transmission if we're not testing for it?
Well, let me clarify then. There's no evidence that that is occurring. There's always a possibility of non-symptomatic cases, but we're not seeing that. We're doing what we can do right now to limit that.
You got to remember, back then our testing was so shallow compared to what we eventually ramped it up to be. So Denver ended up canceling that St. Patrick's Day parade 1 day later. Despite calls for social distancing, the bars downtown were packed that weekend. And sure enough, cases in Colorado started to pick up a few weeks later, and we were off and running toward our first peak in May. This year's St. Patrick's Day parade, that was canceled a long time ago, all the way back in October. With Nolan Arenado gone, speculation is now focusing on the future of another Rockies star, Dinger. Team announced today that the Triceratops, who is always wearing a sort of mask, will be allowed at home games this season, but Dinger will not be allowed to interact with fans. Stand over there, Dinger. The team's updated plan out today almost doubles the number of fans allowed, up to 21,000. You still cannot buy rooftop standing tickets if all you want to do is overpay for drinks and watch the sunset while ignoring a baseball game. But they're at least going to open up the concessions up there for folks who are seated in the 300 level. The state of Colorado's announcement today that 90% of teachers and school staff have their first dose of the vaccine, that is a significant win. We should point that out with the same prominence as we have the bumps along the way. The Polis administration shifting vaccine priority groups is obviously going to frustrate the groups that are moved back. It's going to please the groups that are moved forward. I'd say, though, everybody wins when the state, along with vaccine providers, are able to make quick work of it. The state deserves some similar credit for the solid estimate on when 70% of people 70 years and up would be vaccinated in our state. They announced the following stage weeks in advance in order to prepare providers and the public. There's all kinds of concern. We talked about that here. But then they got to their goal pretty much on schedule. All this is to say, what the state and vaccine providers, those in healthcare, are doing right now is hard. It is unprecedented. It's harder than asking questions about it. It is infinitely harder than simply sitting around and criticizing everything the state does. So let's keep asking questions that have value that reflexive opposition does not have. And let's also give credit where credit is due. So politics used to have an off season, not so much anymore. There are political ads on our air now. And you were thirsty for the truth about them. Jen emailed in about this just as we were starting the show about 10 minutes ago. Deb and Ricky had asked earlier, everybody wants us to break down that state government healthcare option ad. For your information, that ad is paid for by a group that's supported by insurance companies and hospitals. Just know that up front, as our Marshall Zellinger dusts off the truth test machine.
Just when I thought I could pack the truth test away for, longer than a few months.
State politicians want to create a one-size-fits-all government health insurance system.
No. You know how you know without me having to show you any additional context? Listen again.
Called the state government option.
An option is not one size fits all. It's an option. This ad is similar to last year's version, opposing a bill about a state health option that has yet to be officially introduced at the state capitol. Here's how you currently get health insurance. The majority of people get it through their employer. People 65 and older qualify for Medicare. Medicaid is for the people earning less than a specific dollar amount. The individual marketplace, like Connect for Health Colorado, is for people that are not offered employer insurance or for people who make too much to qualify for Medicaid. This bill about a state option targets that last group of people.
It gives politicians greater control over your health care.
No. Not as an individual. You would still be able to choose where you get your health insurance. However, as a health insurance provider, this bill creates an ultimatum that must be met by the start of 2025. It tells health providers to lower premiums 20% for the people who get their insurance on the individual marketplace, and it forces at least 2 providers to offer coverage in the individual marketplace in every zip code. Currently, 10 counties lack 2 options in most zip codes. If that does not happen, then the state would start to offer the Colorado Option Plan. A 9-person board would set rates that healthcare providers would be reimbursed for specific services.
Threatening the coverage you already have and increasing costs.
This is a maybe. If healthcare providers are limited in what they're reimbursed for certain services for people covered by the state option, those healthcare providers could choose to increase rates on other plans to help make up what they lost elsewhere. Just so you know, one of the reports this ad cites to defend part of this claim was paid for, in part, by Partnership for America's Healthcare Future. That's the group that paid for this ad under the local name Colorado's Healthcare Future. For Next, I'm Marshall Zellinger.
Perhaps you heard the Front Range could get a pant load of snow this weekend, or maybe not get all that much at all. Corey Rappenhagen will explain it in terms even I can understand. A spring-like day in wintertime just invites reminiscing to warmer days.
Memories that bring me back home to the normal Colorado that we all know.
We ask people to open up the photos on their phone for one very specific purpose. Next. Have you heard about the snow coming this weekend? And I don't mean the forecast, that well-researched and carefully presented forecast by the professionals. I'm talking about those weather models that are getting passed around on social media like, get a look at this. This is how it works. You got those competing weather models, often wildly differing early. They tend to converge near the end, and the skilled meteorologists make sense of this for us every day. The weather models in the hands of us mere commoners, that is chaos and confusion. People preparing for snow up to the rafters. Now, Corey Rappenhagen simplifies what you might have seen or shared on social media.
Well, it all comes down to experience and probability. There's a lot of really valuable information that you can get from a computer forecast model this far in advance, but snow totals is not one of them. We know from experience that the models are just not very accurate with snow totals more than 4 days in advance. Once you get to about 90 hours out, that's when the accuracy goes way up. And we like to say that the computer models are only as good as the data you put into them. And with the storm sitting out over the ocean right now, we just don't know much about it other than what we can see from satellite. Once the storm comes over land, it'll run over the top of a bunch of weather stations. We'll launch some probes into it, and with that data added to the computer solutions, we'll actually learn a lot more about what may happen. At this point, it's just too early. There's not one single outcome that's more probable than any other, so to make a projection about snow totals just doesn't make any sense yet.
I found both his mustache and his explanation very soothing. Hey, mentioning patio furniture on this show, that's not how you Colorado. Early Monday morning, about 3:30 a.m., group of dudes in a Dodge decided to shop for patio furniture at the Colorado Plus Brew Pub in Wheat Ridge. Pulled up, took the furniture, and drove off. I kind of like that Colorado Plus didn't just post the surveillance video. They told the guys that they forgot the accompanying cushions and that those would be placed outside for a 3 a.m. pickup the following day.
Sunshine with temperatures close to 70 today. Clouds increasing tonight ahead of a storm that will bring a little mountain snow. And we will see a cooling trend heading into the weekend ahead of the main core system still offshore from the Pacific Northwest. As that system nears, the potential for heavy snow Friday through Sunday could be measuring the snow in feet by early next week. Partly cloudy 32 tonight. A few rain and snow showers possible tomorrow, but a mild high of 53. We go cooler on Thursday. The snow begins Friday Friday, turning heavy Saturday. Weekend temperatures in the mid-30s with clearing by Monday. And we do expect this to be a major snow event for the Front Range.
Pull out your phone and look at your camera roll. 1 year back, back past the couch selfies and the screen grabs of all the recipes you've made to pass the time. Let me ask, what were you doing 1 year ago? What were your photos right before the world changed?
I feel like I don't know what life without masks is.
We talked to some Coloradans willing to punch in their passcodes and take a trip down memory lane. You can do it during the break. Then let's discuss next. Most of our phones make it easy to scroll back in our photos and see exactly what we were doing right before the pandemic quarantine started a year ago. Our invitation to do that tonight had you finding and sharing photos that I've looked through of trips to New York City and Paris, simple dinner out, folded flag from a father's funeral, photos of hot air balloons and steamboats. Somebody just sent me one of the Mount Princeton hot springs. It's kind of our universal way of marking that particular moment in our lives. Let's take a look back.
I didn't know it was going to last a year. I thought it would last maybe 3-4 months.
I thought that it was just going to be like another flu thing, but turns out it was just whole pandemic. And
I'm just looking for photos from last year.
It really is a long time ago, March 2020.
And now I'm looking for memories that bring me back home to the normal Colorado that we all know.
February 1st of 2020, I went to a 5K with my family, and it's a picture with us without masks, which is kind of crazy. I feel like I don't know what life without masks is. It's surreal. I'm looking at a picture of my friends kissing my cheek, and I'm like, maybe don't kiss my cheek now. Now I feel like I have to I'm stay away from me.
I was actually in Las Vegas when the pandemic started with the same hat on, actually, which is pretty funny. And I'm eating an ice cream cone, walking down the strip, and all of Las Vegas is deserted. April 10th, 2020. I'm wearing an American flag bandana because it was the only thing I could find.
Me smiling in the sun, just embracing the warmth. Yeah, with no mask especially. I have a picture of me, my first mask right here. I never really thought that I was going to be adding to my wardrobe a favorite mask. During March, when I had lost my job at the pandemic starting, yeah, it's a rough time.
I'm hoping a year from now we no longer have to wear masks. I'm hoping a lot of the population has been vaccinated.
A year from now, if you want to get in the industry of predicting things, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The Denver Nuggets win the NBA championship, and we're parading down 16th Street Mall. And we all got no masks. We're all partying. It's a grand old time. But that's me being an optimist.
I do hope we can start living life again.
Love that look back and forward. Thanks to everyone who's willing to open up their phones to our Foster gains. Some feedback about a visual misunderstanding on this program tonight. Next. Your feedback tonight, Douglas Fry wrote in to say, Marshall explained a healthcare coverage ad and did an excellent job. Douglas passed along his thanks to Marshall and said, now I understand where it's coming from. And that is our goal, Douglas, for you to be able to consider the source on all these things. This is another way of mentioning that Marshall Zellinger is a valued and respected team member around here today. A text, Kyle, is your handkerchief making fun of Marshall's glasses? One person I would have written off, but Jennifer, Jack, Shirley, Mindy all said the same thing. It's just a really unfortunate fold in a pocket square, and I'd like to offer my apologies to Marshall.